So you're a professor of media at McGill. Is there a more natural biographical subject for you than Marconi?
Well, in one sense, he's a natural subject, but at the same time, he was a historical figure who was forgotten for a long time.
Yeah.
Among other things because, with the rise of broadcast media in the second half of the 20th century, Marconi seemed like a precursor. I mean, he was wireless. He was point-to-point communication. He wasn't entertainment and all of that. With the 21st century, Marconi becomes tremendously interesting. I mean, one of the interesting things about Marconi is he was working on problems at the beginning of the 20th century that we are actually seeing the results of.
You're right
today.
about that. He seems more contemporary than other people from that time, from the great age of inventors, because he is more, what's the way I was thinking of it, more Silicon Valley than Menlo Park. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, Marconi actually imagined the type of communication environment that we're living in today, which was such a radical idea at the beginning of the 20th century that, aside from the fact that all the conventional wisdom was, this is impossible, you're not going to be able to do this kind of communication, it also was, it was ahead of its time in terms of what people were prepared to do and what people were interested in. There was a lot of interest in Marconi that he himself actually found a little bit overdone. I mean, Conan Doyle, for instance, who was a spiritualist who believed in communicating with the dead, thought, this is fantastic.
Just the man for me.
This is mental telepathy. I mean, this is exactly. I knew this. I knew that people could communicate without wireless. It was just without wires.
And one of the things that makes him iconic in his time, because he's suitable to ours, is he didn't really care about entertainment that much. He was all about communication. Talking to aliens if he could, but just talking everybody, the whole world linked.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in one of his very last public radio broadcasts, actually, a few months before he died in 1937, he talked about communication as a two-way process, and that the technology would be wasted if it was simply used as a vehicle for frivolity, as he would put it. Yes,
right.
He didn't. He had a very low view of the way commercial radio was developing.
So this is as much your book. I mean, the biography Marconi is as much cultural history as a history of a businessman or a technological development. Are all media revolutions cultural revolutions? That's like sometimes we look back. If it's close to us, we don't like to admit it. We don't like to admit what social media might be doing. we like to pretend that we're absorbing it and using it properly. But when we look back far enough, we can see that Protestantism, the Reformation, and the printing press, these things go together.
Yes.
And how big a shadow does fascism? Because fascism and radio are a pair like Reformation and printing press.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot there to unpack.
Sorry, that was about 5 questions. I apologize.
I mean, certainly, yes, I do think that media and technological revolutions are cultural because, in fact, it's the cultural aspects that drives them, that makes them work. I mean, there are all kinds of, we forget about the technologies that never go anywhere. And the reason they never go anywhere is because people don't relate to them.
Right.
People don't pick up on them.
They didn't change lives, so therefore they don't matter.
Yeah, but now with radio, I mean, radio was very much, when it came in, it really did serve the purposes of propaganda, and not only fascism, by the way. I mean, Marconi set up the world's first international broadcasting service, which was Vatican Radio. Which was at the request of his friend, the Pope, who was concerned, sitting there in the Vatican in the middle of Rome, he didn't want to be too dependent on using Mussolini's telecom system, right? So you know, so you had, and of course this was, you know, propaganda. This is the church propagating.
Yeah.
And-
Inventors of the word
You know, and then
propaganda.
of course you had fascism, but you also had you know, Franklin Roosevelt and Churchill using radio to mobilize people. So, I mean, radio, broadcast radio, as the new technology of the period, was a tremendous political instrument that was used by, you know, all of the powerful political forces of the time.
You just tend to